One thing I know that you mentioned to me before, you were curious in discussing, and I feel like it's a good point. We mentioned pleb miners earlier. You said you started from like a home mining
Yeah,
experience, and with that, it depends on how deep in the rabbit hole you want to go. There's some scalability with it, and I'm just like curious from your perspective, how do you start with just like a couple machines, and how does it then turn into something where you are considering,
yeah,
this is a business, this is potentially something more than a hobby?
yeah. So my personal opinion is you should probably look at it as a business from the get-go, even if it's small. And what I mean by that is you really need to understand your costs. That's kind of the biggest issue folks have is they don't truly understand what their energy rate is, right? What they are charged every month for electricity from their power company. And not just the rate, but they don't understand how the rate adjusts over time with consumption, right? So I would say the first piece is to make sure that whatever power company you're with, you have the ability to fit into a rate that is going to be profitable. Now, if you're just trying to experiment and learn, it doesn't really matter. But if you're kind of thinking, okay, I want to get into home mining and learn how to be profitable, you need to understand your electricity rate. So there's different tools out there, and the math is not too difficult, but sometimes it's in the weeds. You kind of have to comb through the contracts and things like that. But where I was living, we have a lot of spare hydro power, and so our rate just on a residential place during certain months was actually pretty promising. And so what I was able to do was based on the power consumption that I had planned on. So I was able to convince the utility to actually put my house on an industrial rate. There was no loopholes that said it had to be zoned a certain way. There was nothing. So basically I just said, hey, I'm going to use this much. Can I be in this better rate? And they actually, they went along with it. So I think there's ways to find these niches of better rates at home mining. For me, what I did was I started with just building GPU rigs, right? So this was when you could still mine Ethereum and some other things, and I would mine and then trade for Bitcoin immediately because I was just trying to understand the industry and how things worked, and I liked, building things. I quickly maxed out what my house could kind of take with GPUs, and I just felt like for me, keeping the GPUs up and building these custom things, I was like, all right, let me play with some ASICs so that. And once I bought my first ASIC, I was like, that's so much easier. For your viewers who don't know kind of the difference, so an ASIC is a very special purpose computer that only mines Bitcoin. It doesn't do anything else.
Right.
It does one thing and one thing only, and they're very efficient. They're also very loud. But GPUs they're basically graphics cards for maybe video games or image processing, and people kind of repurpose them into mining rigs. You just can't really mine Bitcoin on them anymore. You used to be able to. Now the only way to mine Bitcoin is with one of these ASICs. So I quickly unplugged all my GPUs and moved into all these ASICs and maxed out what my garage could afford. And then I had a bigger panel put on the house and quickly hit the constraint of the transformer that was feeding my neighborhood. So kind of in a nutshell, really start understanding your power costs,
Yeah.
and then start to understand how power is actually distributed and where it comes from. Because one of the things I did while I was figuring out what I wanted to do in the mining industry was I helped some other plebs like myself kind of figure out how to set up their own mining operations just around where I live, right? So I would talk to the power company for them and get them on that special rate I talked about and figure out what they could do at their house. And you start to realize that depending on where the house is, like you've got a transformer limit at a residential location. And so power company is always going to let you buy a bigger transformer, but again, you got to understand your costs. If that makes you out of the money, then you kind of have trade-offs there. So I think there's a fascinating intersection between mining and energy, and you start to learn that the more you dig in.